Switched it off so that there is no resonance.
Hello, hello.
Now it's working.
Hello,
Right?
hello, hello.
All right. So, welcome to this session at the. Yeah. Okay. All right. So welcome to this session. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Welcome to the session on industrial decarbonization pathways. My name is Björn Knob. I work for the Center for Multilateral Negotiations. We train and advise negotiators in the COP process and do a lot of research about how it's going on in the negotiations. I'm happy to welcome Glauco Freitas, the country managing director for Brazil from Hitachi Energy, and also Stéphane Pouvret, the CEO of Energy's 2050. And we'll be joined by Phil Cole and Professor Binesha Bayati soon, hopefully. But let's kick it off now on the decarbonization roadmaps. And then maybe, Glauco, maybe we can start. What do you think are the main challenges right now to decarbonize industry and to electrify, and what needs to be adopted?
Thanks, Björn. Thanks, all of you, for the opportunity to be here. First of all, just let me explain who we are. Hey, Phil, how are you doing? Not a problem. Hey, Phil. First of all, just to explain who we are. We are Hitachi Energy, the energy arm of Hitachi Group, which is one of the five biggest Japanese companies. And we account for 19% of the revenues for Hitachi Group. And what we do, we connect. We connect the power plants to the grid, or we reinforce and modernize the grid, or we connect the loads to the grid, like the industrial sector, mainly the electro-intensive industries, to the grid. And the industrial sector accounts for more or less 37%, one third of the global energy consumption, but accounts for 24%, one fourth of the total emissions. So, I mean, the secret is the modernization, but yet electrification remains limited in this sector. What we can support the segment is through modernizing the grid, is to connecting the renewables power plants to the and bring the energy from the production centers to the consumption centers. This is our main issue to that, and we are doing that at least in Brazil. I'm CEO for Hitachi Energy in Brazil. There is this NBI, which is the New Industry Brazil, is an investment which injects more or less $100 billion in the economy to boost the neo-industrialization of the country, and we are supporting the country to do it in the right pace, in the right scale, in the right pace. So this is the main advice we can do. Not an advice, but this is the main suggestion we can do. Modernize the grid to secure the electrification of the industry, mainly those one in remote places, like in Brazil. It's a continental country. We have a lot of mining and metals companies in the middle of the country, where the grid, besides being very well interconnected, it still needs some kind of reinforcement.
Great, thank you. And then maybe with that, over to you, Stefan. You have you with Energies 2050, you do a very broad range of products and projects. Can you tell us, what do you see, like what does it need in partnerships, in clusters, and maybe also in technologies to decarbonize heavy industries?
Okay, so thank you for the question. And by the way, just a few words about Energy 2050. So we are a global network, fully independent, and we work on the systemic approach of development with quite a number of transversal topics and some nexus approach on many also other ones. And among others, we work with governments, local governments, as well as multi-stakeholder coalition. Just to give you, beside the negotiation and before answering your question, for example, we work also with industrial partners, and we are very complex and high-level research projects, such as on the energy community, for example, and where we have also industrial partners there with hydrogen and decarbonization, among others. And just to give you one example, the FEDECOM project, it is the first worldwide energy communities to be transnational. So we are going to exchange the value of energy saving and renewable energy producing between, let's say, bordering. So just to give you some example, we have the hand on the topics. By the way, beside our NGO activities, we do also this kind of project. But going back to your question, I think it's a very sensitive question, frankly speaking, because there are, some myths and realities. So myths that we need this kind of cluster, we need this kind of platform for many, many things to advance science-based targets, to advance innovation, to share produce, to gain benefits. So I would say yes, blah, 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 wonderful. But we have also a lot of risk. A lot of risk because it's a question of money, of power, of topic to be designed, and also implementation size. So I have 2, 3 items I just want to raise as a concern. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I think the things is good or bad depending what we do about that. So by nature, we need this kind of cluster, that's true. But for example, there are a lot of blind spots. There are also overall overexposed topics because they have an interest. We have that, for example, on materials, on the built environment, on EV industrial process. Some big clusters are very well positioned because they have money, they have a lot of things, they deliver metrics, they deliver their own metrics, they deliver their own, so it's good. But somewhere we can discuss of that, and we have many, many examples in the built environment, for example, about materials, about the footprints, about the metrics, about the transparency frameworks, about many, many things. So just to say, both on industrial as well as materials, technology, is good, but blind spots. Other points I just want to raise, because I'm also, as a spokesperson of NGO side within this panel, is all this, because in France, for example, we have the so-called cluster innovation on many, many topics. We are part of one of them on renewables, it's good, but all these industrial networks, platform, cluster, can also endorse and share infrastructure with associated topics. For example, the gentleman was speaking about renewables, well done, but what's about the integration? What's about the legal size? What's about the financial perspective? What's about all the associated items? We need to work with these gentlemen because they will be the ones to put the materials. But we need also that. So I think so far there are only few reflections on that topic, but I think it's quite strategic, I would say. And after, I would just say also one thing, and after it will be for the second round of questions. All this, let's say, infrastructure, and against, I think it's necessary. So I'm not against by nature, but you understand by reserve, I can imagine. But also, how can they be part of a circularity full channel approach? What does it mean? It means that, for example, we speak about renewables to feed the grid with all the associated items is good. But on the other side, we can have example in Africa, for example, in the Bassin Congo, for example, the lack of infrastructure, yes. But it has also many connections beyond the technology and decarbonization process. So how can we involve that? So if we should anticipate some recommendation, I will say these key topics for me are quite sensitive to really, let's say, push as a flagship product to say, yes, it has to go to this cluster, yes, but taking these 3 pillar consideration. This will be my first remark. Hope it's clear.
Thank you, Stefan, and hi, Minister. Thank you for joining us. We know we've all been having a bit of trouble today to get into the blue zone.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Hence the dynamics here on the panel. So I turn to you in a minute. I turn to Cole first because he had relaxed already. So what do you think? We've heard a bit about the pathway, especially towards renewable energies, and how it is getting more complicated depending on grids and locations and so on. So what's your take on these roadmaps? Where do you think this can go?
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation and great to be here. I think overall we're probably 10 years behind where we should be right now when it comes to things like grid planning. I think everyone realizes that. And I think there's a lot we can be doing now in terms of knowledge sharing, and in some cases knowledge sharing with countries and organizations that perhaps European actors would not necessarily count as friends. So if we look at some countries in Asia, for example, they invested very early in the grid. They are now able to connect renewables at scale, whereas in Europe we tried to build the generation and we're now finding we can't build much more generation because we don't have the grid. So I think we need to really think about how we're taking these approaches. But ultimately, we're here talking about climate change, climate abatement, how we can basically stop the emissions going into the atmosphere. But if we don't build the grid and we don't seriously build it with huge levels of investment, we won't be able to achieve those goals. So that's the start and the end from my point of view. And I think part of the issue here is, in some cases, the short-termism of politics. If you are, a government that's just been elected, you've perhaps got 4 years to make a real impression. Are you going to commit to a grid investment that you won't see the benefits for 10 or 15 years? Or are you going to build a hospital? Or are you going to build a school? And I think that is some of the sort of reason we must now be looking a lot more at particularly public bank and multinational development bank de-risking capital programs for investment, so that it takes the weight, it takes that initial budget impact away from governments, so they can also take that longer term approach. And ultimately, if we can start to make that impact, the private capital markets are ready to invest in grids, they are ready to invest in renewables. They just need to see some of that earlier de-risking of the grid projects, so that they know if they invest in renewables projects, that it can actually be connected to the grid. So I think I'll probably sort of end there for a second, but I think ultimately we must get serious about the grids. We've been talking about it for a long time. No transition without transmission. I was hearing that 3-4 years ago, so let's actually start making some impact on it.
Great, thank you. And now, very warm welcome again, Benicia, to you. You're the Executive Director of the International Institute of Waste Management in India. And so we've been hearing quite a bit about infrastructure and grid and so on. And I guess if we want to get a circular economy running, this is also what we need. So what's your take on how can circular economies and infrastructure help on the decarbonization path?
Yeah, actually I have a short presentation, maybe because that will also explain things. Can I do that? It's already set. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. And apologies for being late because I had some issues at the entrance. Yeah, I represent India, and the organization is called Material Recycling Association of India. Um, I'm mainly going to talk about the circular economy and the climate action, actually championing India's role in the global recycling. You all know that India, I mean, it's my privilege to talk about the Indian era currently, because this is again going through the golden bird era. Because as recognized by the world leaders, the next 2 decades is going to belong to India. So fourth largest economy, all of us know, but the issue or the good part of it is that circular economy in India could generate a market value of 2 trillion USD and create close to 10 million jobs by 2050. We usually think that climate change is going to reduce the jobs and all that, but here we have recycling sector which is going to help in reducing the CO2 emissions, as well as we are going to have a lot of jobs in India. So circular economy sector, as per the report of Ellen MacArthur Foundation, says that 9.3 trillion CO2, tons CO2 equivalent per year by 2050. And out of that, actually the Indian contribution is going to be really massive. And it is roughly the equivalent of many countries put together for the annual emissions. And we all know that the global recycling hub is India, and especially when it comes to the heavy industries, this is going to be an important aspect for circular economy, and that's the question which you've also asked. So what have we been doing in India? It is we have several policies which have also aligned. The PLI is there, the Swachh Bharat initiative, the Mission Life, and we have big players also entering the recycling sector. And if you actually look at the emissions reduction, the aluminium industry, the steel industry, which are all heavy industries, and also the end of life vehicles, which actually encompasses all these sectors, you can see the kind of emission reduction which is possible. 90 to 95% is the energy saving. And it's not just about India, because we are also trying to do the recycling by importing waste, especially the metal waste. And that's also because our demand for the steel and other things are very, very high. And if you actually look at how the CAGR of India, the GDP growth is, we are actually having a big deficit in terms of the steel and other, especially the ferrous sector. I mean, I'm just giving you one example, but it's the same for all the other circular economy sector. So, yeah, this, if you really look at India's position in CO2 emission, these sectors, if you look at steel or any construction or infrastructure, we are going to have a massive CO2 emission reduction only if we actually take the circular economy route. And that's the secondary steel and other resources. So, a little bit about what MRAI stands for. MRAI is an apex body, and we deal with all kinds of circular economy. We work with all many departments in the government, and also in different partner international recycling associations. And we are also the main sector, or the association, which looks into various aspects of the government's policies. We do have several international summits which we are doing. One which is going to come up in India is the Material Recycling Association, the IMRC. And we all have a pledge as per the Indian regulation, I mean the Indian theme, which is the life theme. And we are going to have another event here on 18th, and that will be exclusively on waste management and circular economy. Thank you so much. That is exactly what I wanted to tell you. Thanks.
Thank you, Benisha. And thank you for the insight from India. And I would like to take it back to Glauco, that now we've kind of heard a bit about the value chain, about the energy generation, if you like, about the use and in the end recycling processes. But so let's come to the policy side of it, the support that we need. We've heard a bit about de-risking and so on. What do you think? What is your expectation on policies, and what do we need for the electrification?
Bjorn, it's all about modernizing the grid. And to modernize the grid, companies like Hitachi Energy, which is a global leader for providing critical power grids infrastructure, we need to anticipate the needs. So planning is a must. We need to plan. This is something that we need to plan. And also, just a moment, because I have some information I'd like to share. So planning is the main message I'd like to have. And also new technologies, mainly for electro-intensive industries when using intermittent sources like wind and solar renewable sources. I mean, we need to secure the quality of the quality of the power that will be transmitted to those electro-intensive companies, and we do that through power quality solutions like facts, and also with strong management systems. I mean, digitalization. So digitalization is a key process. Power quality also is a key, another one, and also batteries. Storage systems, because we are talking about intermittent sources. And to take advantage 100% of the power they can produce, we need those kind of batteries. When I put all together batteries, power quality, and digitalization, we can modernize the grid to support the electrification of those industries and the industrial sector.
Phil, let's take the same question to you. What are the policies and frameworks that we would need?
Yeah, thanks. I think some really good points there. Maybe thinking about from the industrial point of view, in many cases today, transferring from, let's say, if you're a steel manufacturer going from a blast furnace to electric arc furnace, you have very large upfront capex investments. And right now, in many cases, the operational expenses, the ongoing cost is higher than just keeping your blast furnace. So we need to find a way where we can basically help, particularly the heavy energy users, to frankly be able to justify commercially making these investments. And we don't see that really at the moment. We're almost sort of assumed the market would make this happen, and it hasn't happened, and it isn't happening at scale, despite the fact that paper companies, steel companies, they all want to go down the route of electrification, but they just can't justify the costs right now. So that's why we haven't necessarily seen the uptake. I think as well as we sort of think about innovation in the sector, in Europe and in many other markets, innovation funding, public innovation funding, tends to be focused on that sort of low TRL level technologies, but then sort of leaves the market to work out what wins and what loses. And I think this is perhaps where we haven't seen necessarily the uptake of hydrogen going as fast as we expected. Carbon capture and storage, we've not necessarily seen that go as fast. So if we're not going to see sort of the public funding supporting that sort of TRL level 2, 3, 4 when things start to get a little bit more mature, then fine, let's just choose the technologies that we want to back for the future. And that means, for example, looking at the more mature technologies, obviously I'm going to talk about wind energy, but we've got solar, biomass. There are other options out there as well, where we can basically bring those green electrons to the grids, which then helps justify the grid investments longer term. And I think combining most definitely climate policy with industrial policy here is really quite key, because in many cases, if I stick with Europe, we have these huge climate goals and then no industrial strategy really to back it up. So you then have the manufacturers trying to work out, well, how do we fit into all this? Is there funding? Is there public bank de-risking? And going forward, we haven't really got time to make those mistakes anymore, where industrial strategy almost comes as a second thought. So now we need to sort of really align those two strategies, climate and industry, and come up with the solutions, and quickly. Yeah.
Maybe before coming to, I think, Stefan, you're the practitioner here, so we'll move to how we actually get it into place just after we can maybe have Benisha first. Do you think the policy environment in India and where you're working, what you're seeing, is that supportive of especially the circular economy that you need, but also of the decarbonization in total?
Especially because we have a circular economy policy in place. And this has also set targets for all kinds of industries, especially the heavy industries, where 2070 has also been given a time frame for all the industries to reduce for decarbonization. And for each of the sector, there is also a monitoring in place where for achieving the net zero. So our policies are definitely in place. Now, we do have one challenge, and that is because we have a lot of informal sector, and that's where we need a lot of innovation in technology. So for that also, currently there are policies. We do have the EPR framework to regulate these kind of issues. So I think our policies are very well established. However, because India is a big country, and to get everything on ground takes a bit of a time, and that's the challenge.
Okay, thank you. So now over to you, Stefan. I think you are someone with your many projects that gets things done on the ground, basically. Can you tell us a bit more on what do you need to actually get your projects going from the public side, but also in general?
So maybe I will, if you allow me, I will just also comment the policy side, because it will also be part of my answer. I would say, especially in COP, because I think there are a lot of confusion here, because people are not negotiating, and sometimes, I'm speaking most of the people around, and so sometimes they make mistakes. They imagine that they will be part of the game. No, the game is policy side. So it is, to answer the generic question, on each topic, if you don't have a clear framework, just forget it. So first, policy side, and as you were saying, if you don't have a full package, it's just blah blah. So if you want to implement the policy side, you have two, three key components. The first one, is it attractable? Do you need to enforce by law because you have a strategy? And if not these two one, does the market can do it? And it is both for energy, industrial side, material, circularity, and everything. So the first one, the policy side, they know where they want to go. If they don't decline in each sector, it's an open, an open hand, and guys will go between the finger. So it will not work. If they put in place the good financial scheme, why they need the financial scheme? To de-risk, that's clear, to give long-term signal, to balance the extra cost. We have so many de-risk process, everybody knows that. So we can do it. We can have the granularity. We really know how to manage risk for technology, risk for implementation, risk for, we know that since decade. I'm 62, 35 years doing the same things. Wow, we know the story. So, but going back at the end, what we expect finally, if the market will just go there, it will go only if it is benefit for him. That's the story. And on the other side, if you de-risk the full process, you are not, and this is why they make mistake here, you are not creating confusion. Because at the end, if it is the well standard applied for everything, grid connection, grid reinforcement, industrialization, hydrogen, blah, we can say all the topics. You share the same competitive process for everyone, so the market will balance. You know that? And you create value, tax, whatever, tax, exemptions, you can be incentive, you can do whatever you want. It's just when you need to equilibrate the real cost of the markets to embrace. So we have many projects in Africa, for example, when the cost of renewables is low than to produce the cost from traditional, and even lower than in France, than in Europe. Why? Because market, it's an open market. But the legal framework is missing. For example, some countries like in Morocco, one example, they can have higher rise percentage of renewables. No, why? Because there is no feed-in tariff, there are no open markets to feed the grid. So tomorrow they will just open this kind of snapshot. The market will just go. So it's very easy. And finally, I will say, what is also missing is people to understand where they want to go. When we speak about circularity, how can we measure the benefit of circularity? We have a small project on circularity which change the life of millions of guys on the value chain of milk, on many things, on the built environment, or raw materials. I can list all the projects we have declined these decades. And at the end, we need also to have some specific metrics to reflect the policy side. Why? Because here, the lady was speaking about informal. Informal also is a value we can measure on adaptation, resilience, blah, blah. We have many things. And so here we need to have the graduation of the metrics depending the target. And the metric is sensitive. Why? Because, for example, in our country, because we work in the global south, we will go to adaptation with co-benefit on mitigation. But in northern countries, they don't understand the topic. But here, we need to create value in metrics. Why? Because adaptation, resilience is a benefit for so many topics, and at the end, you need to put a price on that. So this is also a way that the legal framework can adapt. So I will not be too long, but for me, it is a crazy question, because even if we go to hydrogen, I would speak about green hydrogen for sure, not the other ones, but if you go for industrialization, if you go, you have a capture market. So you are the master. You can have, zero carbon area in harbor, in many things. We have so many good examples, and they are not duplicated. So something is wrong. So to say it has to be a full package. Unfortunately, we know the story. And I would just say one figure, allow me to conclude. There is also a big mistake, because these guys sometimes are lying. I'm not saying all the guys are bad, but what is about the price? Sorry to just recall, we speak about renewables. I'm doing renewables since I was a young guy. So, but okay, but the fossil fuel subsidy market, do you know the figure? 7% of the global GDP, guys. 7% of the global GDP. And 2022, it was 5.1%. It is not my data, it was the IMF. So, and in 7% now, and it's increased. We speak about decarbonization, but we have such a huge stock of fossil fuel, and everybody go up. And even here in Brazil, this is why people are contesting, and I'm fully support that. Because last COP, you opened 800 new drilling at the closure day of the last COP. And now you say, okay, we want a roadmap, but it makes no sense. So do we want to, and to conclude, if we go to this point, we need to make all the topics we discuss here more, I don't know the name, but I would say sexy, sorry for that, but more attractive than the one. Because if it is not as well as attractive than this big player, they will never go out. So this is my word, but also to advocate. We know how to do it. We have the granularity of answer, but nobody wants to imply because of this big player with this big money, 7% of the global GDP against renewables. And despite that, we put more renewables last year than the big polluters. So something is wrong. I close it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Phil, I know you've been agreeing here, right-hand side, and we'll come to that. But Glauco, you will have to take off soon. So maybe one last word from you, maybe reaction to what Stefan just said, or how do you see that market and that political landscape for your electrification?
Can I just complement what I said in the last question? I was talking about anticipation and planning. This is very important for a company like ours, which is investing $9 billion since 2020 to 2023, $3 billion, 24 to 27, $6 billion just in our production, but also in our supply chain, R&D, and modernization. Next steps, Bjorn, in our opinion, would be the energy efficiency. This would be a key message, but this is not enough. We know that, but energy efficiency would be key, and we can contribute for that. Also, as Stefan said, you guys should think about alternative fuels, biomass, green hydrogen, synthetic alternatives, and also the heating process. It's mandatory to electrify the heating process. Tomorrow, we will launch during COP30, we will launch a paper just about the decarbonization of the industry. And in this paper, I didn't know that, I just learned that coal, gas combustion, and heat accounts for 42% of the global CO2 emissions. So by electrifying the heating process would be a significant alternative. So energy efficiency, alternative fuels, and also the heating, electrification of heat process would be our suggestions for that.
Thank you so much. And now,
but I can stay until the end of the session, not a problem.
No worries. Phil, you were agreeing heavily, and now you've heard another comment on that from Glauco. Where do you see where we are with that right now, with the overall policy landscape?
Yeah, I'm frustrated with it, is what I would say. But I think in terms of where we are collectively, the royal we, I think we've got a little bit stuck in trying to work out what we're actually trying to do here. We're trying to keep global emissions lower. We're trying to keep the temperature down, and yet we all then, come to Baku or Dubai or Belém, and we have these conversations where we all have the solutions. Then we then go away and we come back in another year's time and have the same conversations again. And I mean, that can start to get a little bit frustration. And this is only my fourth COP now, so there's others who have been through this cycle many more times than I have. But I would think, look, let's really think about how do we make it easier for industry to decarbonise. I come back to my de-risking point. We have to de-risk. We have to use public banks better. There's something like 400 or so multinational development banks and regional development banks which are already de-risking projects, but they're all doing it on their own individual agenda, program requirements. So there's some more collective thinking there. I know that the OECD, for example, is trying their best to bring together groups like this to basically coordinate. So I think collaboration and coordination of how we go forward is really key. And then I think probably at this stage, maybe a bit of a less is more approach. So rather than trying to have these, to Stefan, to your point, these huge roadmaps that we sort of rush to get at the end of the negotiations, just really think about, per topic, per theme, what is the 2 or 3 things we want to come back in 12 months' time and say, you know what, we actually made progress there. Maybe that's the approach, because otherwise, we've had several years now of very good conversations in many countries around the world, and then we then come back a year later and go, well, we didn't actually progress that much. Maybe we're just trying to do too much. Let's just be honest about it. And I think the final area is going to be really thinking about sort of a just transition. Skills and education is really key here. If I just look at the wind industry, often we talk about high-skilled jobs. Wind industry does require high skills and high skill mindset, but actually in Europe, for example, 2/3 of the jobs we will need now through to 2040 in the wind industry will not require a university education. They're technicians, they're production workers, they are maintenance engineers, they are electricians. So it's a fantastic opportunity for the wider community to be part of this, but we just need to get better at communicating how we go forward. That was a little bit of a puzzle of responses there, but I think that sort of maybe gives my view on where we're up to.
I think it's important, since we're sitting at COP in the blue zone here, it's important to build that bridge to what's going on in the negotiation rooms. And maybe again, coming back to you, Benicia, we've heard now a few things about policy, but also about job creation, about skill development and international cooperation. So what is it that maybe you would need in India, but also beyond, to make the circular economy more happening?
To make the circular economy viable in our country, it is also important to look at certain new sectors. In the sense, we're all talking about renewable energy. However, India has gone a big way in introducing the solar power. But what we have actually missed is the recycling of those solar panels. Because that's going to also create a lot of you need a lot of energy to be spent, and also a lot of technology innovations, which is also important to recover certain precious metals and also the base metals, because now we all know, just like energy security, we are also having this issue of mineral security, especially with the new kind of world order. So here we require a lot of technology innovations, and it is also going to create a lot of jobs. So for which skill development is a must, and this is what is going to be the new policy or the implementation schemes which is going to be introduced in our country. We are already thinking about this issue.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we're slowly coming to an end here. Since I work for the Center for Multilateral Negotiations, we're all about negotiations, and negotiations are all about agreements in the end. So my final question to you would be, who do you need an agreement with, and why? So whoever wants to start. Stefan, you want to go?
I can jump in because we need not to forget it, and it's good to remind that we are in the blue zone. So what is about here? It's a multilateralism. So we need that, and many guys, because they don't know what's going on here, are against that. So we need that. Why? Because it will be the common denominators. So it will be slow. It will be really slow, but we need it. For those who don't know, because I've been doing almost all the COP, by the way. So it's a long process, but not we have many things. We have metrics, we have indicators, we have transparency frameworks, we have a global stock take, we have NDC, we have NAPS, we have long LTS, we have many things. So, okay, let's say it's good. Not enough, but good. It's a basic common denominator. What's the job to be done to answer your question and yours? Is also to come back home and to deal with the governance. We have been designed some NDC, NAPS, and some other documents, so or Green Climate Fund requests and something. So we know that, but we need to demonstrate and to de-risk on the policy side also, while we discuss with the stakeholders and doing the national consultations, what's going on and what should be done. Because here, this is also a mistake. They are not going to say something about recycling. They are not going to say something about renewables, because this is not their mandate. And if they say that, it will be an offense. And even the IPCC report, they don't even agree on the statements. And even if it is officially the scientific body. So can you really expect they would say a roadmap dealing with national constraints? It makes no sense. So, still working here, multilateral, we need it. We need to reinforce negotiators to understand what they are doing about, to open windows sometimes, fresh air, to explain, re-advocate, blah, blah. But when we go back, all the coalitions, among other industrials, we work also with some industrials, also the ones with local governments, the ones with all the guys need to understand the picture and to push the agenda, because at the end, the national agenda will be the one. And the guys will report here about the topic. So we need to have, this, let's say, movement all the times. And this is why, like you, we are treating people like you, and I imagine most of you also do that, because people need to capture opportunities and why there are solutions. Because the good news, and here because we speak about EV decarbonization, is that we have the tools, we have the knowledge, and we can do it in a such short terms, which is so amazing. But we don't do it because people are crazy, because they don't want, because they can benefit others. But we have the solution, not us. Okay, many guys have the solution, but they are on the table. And most of them are attractive, which is good. So this is a message at the Energy 2050 we push here and we demonstrate somewhere, but this is a good solution. We need to do that. So I close on that. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Who do we need an agreement with?
Well, Bjorn, in line with the pledge of COP28 to triple renewables and double energy efficiency by 2030, I'm not sure if this will be kept after COP30. What I heard is double renewables by 2030. We need to secure a reliable and sustainable and renewable and affordable energy for you guys in the industrial sector. What I would say is that the decisions must be taken now. Decisions we take right now will last for decades, maybe centuries. And when we talk about boost, the modern grids can boost the industries, but can also boost the communities, reduce emission, secure the access, secure a better quality of life for the communities, improve the resilience for climate changes. So this would be my main message. Decisions must be taken now.
Since my field is waste management and recycling, what I feel is that we actually need an agreement from all the different countries for movement of recyclables, and but with with a caveat that technology transfer should also happen, because otherwise it will just amount to dumping of the waste. So if this happens, I think that will definitely work for all the countries.
Over to you, Phil.
Yeah, I think at this stage now there's two sort of places or people that we need an agreement with. The first is society. You know, governments come, governments go. Let's just be open about it. But what doesn't change necessarily is the people there who are voted in these governments. If we can help them understand the challenges, if we can help them understand the need, and also be honest, you know, some of these things will mean that costs will go up initially, or that some jobs could be put at risk. That is just the reality. But of course, we don't really talk about it because it's not very good news sometimes, but it's just a fact. And either we find ways of not making that happen, or we're just open and transparent about the need for a short-term pain for long-term gain. And I think the secondly is, you know, we need, you know, policymakers to come to an agreement with themselves that what they need to be doing is setting roadmaps, making agreements at the end of COPs that they believe is actually achievable. So I think we've had many years now of very, and it's hard to knock it, but we've had many years of ambitious goals which aren't being hit. And we just heard there, you know, maybe there's rumours now that we'll go from tripling renewables to doubling renewables. Well, that was an agreement we came to together only 2 years ago. You know, so if we can't even hit these things, let's really think about what we're doing, and let's just be honest with ourselves and be honest with society. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all so much for this panel. I close it here. We've heard a lot about infrastructure, about the finance and de-risking part, about the support that we need from governments, and also from the multilateral system and its commitments. And yeah, I'll be happy to see you all in 12 months and see where we went since COP30. And maybe in Australia, maybe in Turkey, we never know. And wish you all a great industry day at COP.